this war is not of major importance for him, first thing. Secondly, he doesn't want to take the same position as Mr. Biden, and so he's taking the Moscow Mr. Putin language, and probably because they've got very strong links between Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump. And I think that what he's realizing is that with this position, in fact, he will never have an agreement. And what he wants very quickly is an agreement. He has been negotiating for 3 months now, and nothing happened.
So the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, there in Paris for those talks on the future of Ukraine. President Macron, he's been joined by representatives from Germany and, of course, from Britain to talk about plans to guard a ceasefire when there is a ceasefire. Let's first welcome to the programme General Dominique Triquand, the former head of the French military mission to the UN and to NATO and a former defence advisor to President Macron. Hello to you, General.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. So, I will come to the questions of the coalition of the willing in just a moment. But the president's envoy, Steve Witkoff, he is rather pushing this idea of Ukraine ceding sovereignty of those Russian-occupied areas as part of a ceasefire deal. Does France strongly support Ukraine in rejecting that idea?
Yes, of course, rejecting this idea. First, because the idea is that the ground which was annexed in September 22 is not occupied by the Russian currently. So accepting to leave that to Russian means that the ground which is currently under control of Ukraine should be evacuated to be given to Russia. So, of course, it's completely unacceptable. So I think that the meeting in Paris currently is really the fact that there is no success at all in the negotiation, the US negotiation, and the US understand that they've got to have allies with them if they want to succeed.
Okay, so what is your view, General, of the route, the possible route to a ceasefire?
The first thing is that Russia need to accept a ceasefire, which is not the case at all today. Why? Because Mr. Trump and and his special envoy are only talking the Russian propaganda. Saying that it was Ukraine who started the war, and this war is not important, in fact, for the US. So, in fact, they have to change their words and to take the words of a real negotiation, which is not taking the words only from Moscow, but also understanding what Ukraine wants. And so I think that up to now, Washington hasn't succeeded at all in that. So they need to change their words.
Yeah, the president has spoken in the past of applying pressure on Russia and on Vladimir Putin, maybe quite strong sanctions, but he has not done that. And what we have seen, as you say, General, is the president echoing the lines of argument that come straight out of the Kremlin. In your analysis, why is the president taking that line? Why is he doing that, in your judgment?
In my information, the information gathered about Mr. Trump is that he's really in the end of Moscow. And that's why he's speaking like that. This war is not of major importance for him, first thing. Secondly, he doesn't want to take the same position as Mr. Biden. And so he's taking the Moscow Mr. Putin language. And probably because they've got very strong links between Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump. And I think that what he's realizing is that with this position, in fact, he will never have an agreement. And what he wants very quickly is an agreement. He has been negotiating for 3 months now, and nothing happened.
Yes.
So that's why I think they are in Europe currently.
Okay, what does seem pretty clear, General, doesn't it, is that the American team, the president and his colleagues, they want to develop a business relationship with Russia as and when there is some kind of ceasefire. Is that the route to a rift with Europe? Because I imagine, many leaders in Europe just will not wish to follow down that path.
Yes, of course. I think the US are only speaking about money, about deal, commercial deal. Mr. Putin understands that very clearly. That's why he's talking about this agreement on the aircraft, Boeing aircraft. But Europeans are not at all on the same line. You know, they have opened, I'm talking about European Union, is opening the book for Ukraine to join European Union. So they need to have a different sort of an agreement if they want to have Ukraine inside Europe. And of course, UK is strongly supporting the position of Ukraine after the invasion of Russia. So we are on a different world.
Yes.
Europeans are talking about an agreement for the future. US are talking about a business agreement for the short term.
Yes. Well, I mean, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, put it very starkly just the other day. She said the concept of the West was now dead. Instead, we have America and we have Europe, and they have completely different, completely divergent attitudes and approaches and ideas of common interest. The West is dead. Would you go that far?
Yes, I will go that far. I think that we were talking about the free world. And in fact, the free world now is in Europe. No longer, of course, in Russia, but no longer in the US. And so that's a decision by the American. I mean, the Europeans want to have a strong link with the US. It's up to the US to recognize that they need to have strong allies. And the strong allies, the better, are the European. But currently, on the short term, for the last 3 months, everything was shambled. And so we will see if Mr. Trump will go, before the midterm election, will have to change the way he's looking at his allies.
Right. I mean, now let's move on to this question of European support for Ukraine, because it's been a bit of a tangled route to where we are now. I mean, key players in Europe, General, have been much less enthusiastic than others about giving full-blooded backing to Ukraine, whether it's the supply of weapons or other forms of support. And is that still not the case? You still have members of the European Union, European nation states, who are not willing to give full support to Ukraine for fear of escalation.
No, as usual, we are always talking about what is going wrong and not what is going well. I mean, in Europe, who is against that? Hungary? Hungary, 9 million people?
No.
Really alone inside Europe. We'll see election in Poland in a few weeks, and in Romania. We'll see what will happen. But really, up to now, for the last 3 years, Europeans have been pretty much united in supporting Ukraine. So look at what's happening on the good side and not on the wrong side.
Well, I'm trying to take a balanced view. And it is the case that Germany, for example, yes, they're taking a firmer line now in terms of the rearmament of Germany, the rearmament of Europe and the support for Ukraine. But for a long time and until recently, Germany was very hesitant about supplying, say, long-range missiles to Ukraine. That's clearly the case, isn't it?
Yes, of course. Yeah, there is a major change in Germany. And for the last 3 years, Germany was always hesitating. Now, the future chancellor, which will be in place in May, has a very firm position. And I think this is a major change because with UK, Germany and France and Poland, of course, we've got very strong allies for Ukraine. And that will probably help Europe to be more united behind Ukraine.
Okay, now as things stand, America shows no sign of offering American guarantees of security to this so-called coalition of the willing to guard a ceasefire when and if there is a ceasefire. Can you, from where you are, looking at it as you do through expert eyes, aware of the views of different players around the table, do you see a prospect of the various countries coming together to agree a plan for this coalition that could operate without American support? Is that possible? And what would it do?
No, really, I think that Europeans don't want to be committed without the American. They want to have the American. The problem is to convince the American. But up to now, I mean, on the very short term, we can discuss as far as we want on that. The first point is to have Putin agreeing on the ceasefire. And there is no single word on an agreement with Putin. So really, the Americans want to understand that the first thing, before discussing with Europeans, is to force Mr. Putin to have a ceasefire, at least a short-term 300 days ceasefire, and that's the main focus of this meeting.
All right. General Dominique Triquand, former defense advisor to Emmanuel Macron. Thank you so much for joining us, General.